The greatest illusion that your ego tells you is that you can control people, situations, and outcome. But by the time that you realize that this is not true, your ego has already smashed your belief in yourself and your connection with whatever you choose to call divine. You know exactly what it feels like to lash out in desperation, to try even that much harder to produce that outcome. You avoid it, you be nicer, you get angrier, or you even let that shit go. But all of these are just reinforcements that your ego uses to keep you disconnected. That isn't a lack of control. What it actually is a delusion of what you actually can control. And your ego is trying to do everything it can to keep this illusionment alive. So this video is not about tips and tricks on how to reinforce or reassert your control on people and outcomes. What it is designed to smash the delusions that you have around what you can and cannot control. Because knowing this will allow you to change the trajectory of your life. Let's get into what the ego's job is when it comes to control. The ego's job is to protect the identity, to produce a certain level of safety. That's the ego's job, this idea of self. To the ego, the definition of control is producing an outcome that we want that achieves that protection, that safety. This is the control, and control is an illusion that our ego tells us, and the job of this ego is to detach us from our spiritual nature. And this is the illusion that we have been lived with, that we can control everything in our life. But that's not necessarily true. This is a misconception that you've been told and I've been told, because there's only two things that we can technically control, and that is our actions, what we do, and then also our belief. And everything outside of that is either an input that stimulates those beliefs and the actions, or an output that is a result of all of the moving parts that we cannot see. Let me explain. Thoughts in a situation or stimuli, they are the things that cause our belief to produce a emotional response or a reason for us to want to take action, a reason for us to do a certain thing. When we do things, we are usually doing them because we think or believe a certain type of way. Now, when I say that we don't get to control our thoughts, that is the stimuli, is because try to predict what your next thought is going to be. Can you do it? Probably not, because thoughts just stream in and out of our head. Now, the slower we can control the amount of thoughts that come in, then the more in tune and in line our thoughts will be with our spiritual connection. And so we don't really get to control how much is coming in. And then we also don't get to control the people around us or the situation that we're in. Now, we can decide where we go and what we do in those situations, but we don't get to play God in the fact that we don't see all the moving parts. Each individual person sees those parts, a fragment of it. And so we have a limited view over what the main thesis, if you will, of that situation is and what the result is going to be. And so this is the delusion that we live with, that if we just change who we are or change our behaviors or be nicer or let that shit go or avoid a situation altogether, that we're going to be able to make sure the outcome is what we want. And then what ends up happening when we do that is we double down on how we are showing up because it's not working. Because the outcome isn't working. It's not falling into the place that we want. And the more that we exert ourselves, the further disconnected that we are. And then we start causing harm in the world. Whatever harm. You could, like, hurting people's feelings. I'm not really a big proponent of hurting people's feelings, right? Everybody is responsible to regulate their own feelings, and I'm not going to be responsible for them. So I'm not a proponent for that. But we do harm in the sense that we damage our credibility and the relationship dynamics between people when we are just assholes or mean, or even manipulate somebody by being even more kind to try and get them to do what we want them to do. And so every single time we do this, it's like a little a piece of gunk that starts to clog up this pipe, this connection to the divine. When we show up in the world and cause harm, we are inherently blocking that connection because we are trapped by the ego. We're trapped by the insecurity that we cause, or the pride, the way that people see us, or the ego, the way that we see ourselves, this idea of self. And so because we do that, we do get disconnected from this spiritual nature of ours, and the flow of thoughts speed up. They speed up. And what ends up happening because of this is that we lose control even over our belief and our action. So the flow of thoughts running so much start to contaminate what we believe in, or what we believe is right or wrong, or what our belief around our moral philosophy is. And then the pressure gets so much that we leave our body, our mind leaves our body, and we begin to lose control over what we do. And we start doing without thinking and thinking without doing. So this is what autopilot is. So there's a rebuild kit down below to help you break that autopilot and bring your mind back into your body so that you can have that spiritual connection. The more that we control a situation, or think that we control it, this delusion of control, the more that we do that, the more separated we become from ourself. And by ourself, I mean our true nature, our spiritual nature. And when we start to separate from that spiritual nature, we start latching onto all of the masks, the personas that we put on. Like, I'm more mean to make sure a person knows to respect me, or I'm more nice to make sure that this person who is awesome stays in my life. Like, these are deviations from who I really am, and they show up in the form of masks. And these are just my ways of trying to control the outcome, trying to put all the chess pieces where I need them to go to try and checkmate the situation. And it blocks us off from the spirit, the sunlight of the spirit. So I'm going to leave you with these two things. The two things that we can control is the belief that we have about a situation or a thing or a person, and we can also control what we do. So those are the only things that we can control. And so what I want you to do is, next time in a situation where you start to feel like you don't have control of it, I don't want you to ask yourself, why is it that I can't control this? I want you to ask yourself this question: what am I surrendering to? So let me break this down, because this is a whole perspective shift we're about to go through. Control is our beliefs and what we do. So we can choose what we believe is the correct path for us to go down. And then we can choose to walk down that path. But we're surrendering to a path that we're choosing. So let's say that you have two roads. And one road is trying to build a business, and then the other road is working for somebody else just so you can make ends meet. Now, one path could lead to greed. The other path could lead to misery or low self-worth because you're working for somebody else at a low hourly wage. But I know people who have left six-figure jobs and have went to being a mechanic because the fulfillment and the personal relationships that they had was far greater than any money could ever buy. And the greed diluted their experience with their higher power. And on the six-figure path or the business path, you can still walk down that path and surrender to the divine intuition that you get along that path that is going to end up helping people. So you're surrendering to both paths, and then on each single one of these paths, there are going to be moments where you can surrender to your divine intuition or your ego's need to control the situation. Those are two paths. And so I want to leave you with that. Like, am I trying to control an outcome, or am I trying to surrender to my divine intuition? What spirit, source, divinity, Jesus, it doesn't matter. Whatever your connection is, whatever your idea of something greater, a higher order of things, are you surrendering to that along the way, or are you trying to be that and control the situation? So I love y'all. Peace. And if you do get lost along the way, just go ahead and watch this video. All right.